Thank you very much. But I think it is time to get back to the dancing very promptly. So we're going to hit you now with a song I like to call Nabokov's Wandering Eye.
Last but least step.
Welcome to the 2-Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%, in which we take one giant book, ARDOR or ARDOR in this case, break it down bit by bit, section by section, read it, talk about it, discuss it, analyze it, have fun. I'm Chad Post from Open Letter Books, joined as always by Brian Wood.
Hi, Chad. Good to be here. Did you get shot this week at all?
I did not get shot yet this week.
Hey, that's a good week, man. Way to go.
But all the protesters got thrown out of occupying City Hall while I was in class, so I'm not sure what's actually happening.
But in a perfect universe, Chad, after that shot, you should have developed like superpowers and become some sort of Marvel Comics Avenger, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah? Like the Avenger.
It's still coming.
The publisher.
I walk around with like a big dictionary and a manual of style and like with black pepper balls.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm here to put order on the libraries of the universe.
Yeah.
And you're sort of of eugenetic Thanos, but with books.
And your catchphrase has to do something about...
Half the books have to go away from now on.
Your final line before you end somebody is something about the Oxford comma.
It should be that or stat. It's just stat.
Yeah.
You've been statted.
I think we're laughing too much. Let's get a little bit serious.
I think we're
Who
police. My God.
on earth could be our guest today, Chad?
Rodrigo Fresán, the
Hello.
most famous non-reader of ARDOR or ARDOR that I'm aware of.
Well, but a special kind of non-reader because I'm trying to read it all the time. In fact, once John Irving told me, John Irving's favorite author is Charles Dickens, and he told me that he read all of Dickens except one novel. He didn't mention the title, and he told me that he's saving that novel for the day the doctor says, "I have very bad news for you. You have like 2 months to live." So he's saving that for us. So maybe I'm doing that with Ada, you know. How is it? Is Ada or Ada for you? Ada.
We tried to figure this out last week, and I still don't know.
I think it's Ada or ARDOR. You know, that's
Ada.
ARDOR.
But we're going to call it Ada because we're American.
ARDOR, I can't say ARDOR right, generally. It gets stuck. But adding Ada on there doesn't help. It has like a setting up of like a sound. I can't get both of those words to go right. Also, we have on the long list.
No, but I was
hot take reactions that didn't happen again. But alas, and
but as I was telling you, you know, I try to read it all the time. I try to read it again during the pandemic. I said it's now or never. But I always stop at around page 122, and the thing I always do is when I'm going to take a plane or going to be on a long trip, I always take the book again with me in order to try to read it on that trip finally. But I always buy a new one. So I have like 35 copies of that. I think I have like 25 in English. I brought some of them in order to show you.
Oh my God, I love it.
Get ready. Well, this is the Library of America volume that contains it. It's with transparent things and look at the harlequins.
Nice.
And I was thinking about that. Nabokov considered himself, you know, an American writer on his own words, an American writer born in Russia. And I think that he's the only one with Singer that is a foreigner on Library of America. I think they are the only two authors. And
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the only one because, I think he wrote. In fact, I always say this. You know, when the theme of, you know, the great American novel, which one is? I always say, I'm sorry, but it was written by a Russian in the midst of the Cold War. It's Lolita. There's not more American book, great American novel, written by a foreigner who revolutionized the idiot, the language. You can ask more than that. To represent America.
I feel like when I was looking for images for this post last week for the first episode, that the one that came up was a Time magazine that had the title like America's Greatest Living Novelist is Russian.
When Ada came out, that it says the novel is alive and well in Antiterra. That's the caption there.
Oh, cool.
And it's and that's funny because when the novel came out, when Ada came out, it was celebrated as a masterpiece. It was, I think it was number 4. I took some notes, and I think it was number 4 on the bestseller list. It was Godfather in number 1, The Love Machine by Jacqueline Susan number 2, Portnoy's Complaint number 3, and ARDOR number 4. And like 2 months after the book came out, people started to say it's not so good, really. For example, Mary McCarthy, who wrote like a glowing review for Pale Fire, which for me is like the most avant-garde, transgressive, experimental, best book ever, And she said the book, Ada, is really so bad that it makes me reconsider all the books he wrote before.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And Nabokov sort of he was if you listen, well, if you read to his correspondence at the time, he was waiting for it. He always refers to the book as my fat book or Nabokov's Folly. He says Folly, and I think that I don't know why I always stop reading. I don't know why.
That was gonna be my question.
Yeah, but I think that it's the only place where Nabokov tries to measure himself against his heroes in a very evident way. He wants to be like, he's like comparing himself to Tolstoy, to Anna Karenina, which for him was the best 19th century novel. He tries to be Proust.
Yeah.
And last but not least, he tries to be Nabokov.
Yeah.
Which is like, he's all the time like self-referencing and making very bad, funny jokes about him and himself. So he's like saying like some sort of, he's like I don't know, like posing for his statue and at the same time like dismantling all the Nabokovian myth. There's like some sort of two forces at work there. I think that's my theory, and also there's a lot of he from the technical point of view. I mean, he tries to do everything because if you pay attention to the book is told from it's like an old manuscript being commented and annotated from the future during the present when you are reading it. It's like a whole complex of spheres in a sort of United States completely J.J. Abrams sort of thing in a way. Yeah. It's like, but well done, and you understand it.
Yeah.
I was curious.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Chad.
No, you go.
I was curious. Last week we were talking about what it's like to read his work. Maybe not necessarily this book, but other works. And you had mentioned it briefly about Lolita and Pale Fire. Like for you as a writer and obviously a voracious reader first, what is like the experience of reading Nabokov like for you?
Well, you have to be, first of all, pretty careful because he's a very toxic writer. He's like COVID, You can be really, it happens with Proust also, it's like a pretty contagious, invasive sort of writer in the good sense, and he's like, I think that the most interesting thing and the most joyful thing for me of reading Nabokov is like the constant happiness. That there's happiness you've never seen a happier man in the world. Maybe Cortázar, it's like him in terms of I'm having so much fun while I'm writing it, and what makes it for me even more valuable is the idea that he had a pretty complicated life. He had all the reasons to be tragic, to play the card of the refugee, the political. Probably won a Nobel Prize if he could have done that, and he would have been, but he was perfectly happy. And nothing provokes more untrust to academy than a happy writer, I think.
True.
I think so, yeah.
If you don't have that tragic air,
you're not supposed to be happy when you write.
No, definitely not. And this is like, I've really enjoyed this so far. Like, I find it, I know what you're saying about it, like sort of like the nods to Tolstoy and Proust and himself, and the way that it's sort of like, that's kind of baked into it. But I don't mind that right now. Like, I mean, maybe because I've read a bunch of the books in a row, like Panin just a few weeks ago, that I'm sort of
Panin is amazing.
Oh, so good. So good. I mean, all of them a lot of them are really good. I'm not as big of a fan of like Invitation to a Beheading. Like ones that are like more political, even Ben Sinister I liked, but not as much. I like these ones and those really early ones, like Laughter in the Dark, that are like really emotional at the same time and have that core. But like this book in particular, like I've just really enjoyed like the writing level of it. And like, I don't know, there's a part, so I have a controversial statement about it, but I have a question for you with the games that maybe one of you two is much smarter than I am, because some of the games are super fun and I get it, and sometimes I don't. Like all the references to Lolita I find hysterical, as if he's toying with us, and that ties into my grand comment in a minute. But there's one on page 77, which, so
you're using this one, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you want me to show you first all my editions of Lolita?
Yeah.
I have this one. I have a first edition, which is it's fun because in the cover says only Ada. I think that they leave out the ARDOR part because they want to relate it to Lolita, in commercial terms. I think so. I have this is the first paperback.
Wow.
Which is very funny because, well, it has blurbs, of course. There's the New York Times, Look Magazine, Newsweek, Anthony Burgess, Gene Stafford. And this is the most fun part. There's a blurb by Van Bean.
Oh my God, and wow, nice.
It's amazing. I have this one. This is the old vintage one.
That one.
This is a penguin it's Ada or ARDOR with no comma, which is interesting.
Yeah. They don't believe in commas in Britain anyways.
No. This is...
Oh, too hot. That's not safe for work.
No. And I'm going
to block it now.
No, and I even read... I haven't read it, Ada, but I have this, that it's a whole book by Brian Boyd, by Nabokov's biographer on Ada.
Have
you seen this?
That's awesome. I feel like I should have that for this podcast.
Yeah. And to finish this part of our night, I'm going to show you the two absolute. I'm not watching you. Where are you? Did you disappear?
I made it you so that we can just see the books. Yeah, we're here.
Okay, sorry. Okay, and I'm going to show you the absolute two jewels of my crown. One is this one, which is conclusive evidence, which is the first version of Speak Memory.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And this, get ready for this.
Oh my gosh, two of them?
This is the first edition, the French edition of, in Giraudia's.
Yeah.
In 2 volumes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
That is super cool. You've got a great collection of all.
And all this is going to disappear like tears in the rain when I die. I mean, it's going to be sold by the weight,
Hopefully in a pair of bike shorts.
No, it's going to disappear. Tears in the rain.
In the rain, a little Blade Runner action.
Yeah.
Well, here's my question. There's a lot to talk about here, but this is the first thing that I really wanted to ask you guys because I couldn't figure it out, and I think I'm just missing something really obvious and stupid. But there's a note from page 77. On 77, it says, page 77 has, at the very beginning, the child is permitted to wear her Lolita, thus dubbed after the little Andalusian gypsy of that name in Osberg's novel, and pronounced, incidentally, with the Spanish T, not a thick English one. And the note in the back says, Osberg, another good-natured anagram, scrambling the name of a writer with whom the author...
Borges.
Ah!
Come on, Chad.
But we in Argentina we talk about this line all the time. I mean, it's like a national theme of conversation.
Oh, really? I had to like write it down and figure it out.
No, it's
Borges. Know it right away. Okay.
I looked at it for like 2 minutes. Was like, I have no idea. Like,
No, it's Borges. Yeah, because you know what? I think it was in there was a year when the finalists for the Nobel Prize were like Borges, Graham Greene, and Nabokov. And none of them got them. The one who got them was like some Swedish called Ingrensborgen zum Surpremden den Baklongen. You know, that was a year.
I don't know what you're talking about there, though, because prize committees are infallible.
Sorry?
Prize committees, especially the Nobel, infallible. 100% right.
Oh, you have to think about this. Nabokov never get any of the big prizes. Never. Not one of them. Not the Nobel, not the National Book Award, not the Circle's Critic Books Award. None of them. Never.
Oprah's Book Club? Can you let's get an Oprah's Book Club? No?
No.
Could you imagine if Oprah's Book Club did like Lolita? I would buy a subscription for that. I would buy TV to watch that. That would be. So to frame this one too, so the last section we did last week kind of went through like the overture of like the grand theme, setting everything up more or less in a confusing, intentionally confusing way. This 60 pages was so much slower and so much easier to like digest in a sense, in a way, because it's just like a love story. Like to me, it was like more of the bucolic Tolstoy love and like Russian novel thing. Mm-hmm. The one problem being that the two people are falling in love and fucking are half brother and sister.
Yeah.
You know?
That was totally normal back then.
And, you know, Nabokov used to say beauty is in the details. So that's the detail.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting. It's like a whole thing, like almost like this game of where the writing in this section is so polished of like in a more like romantic sense. And as you said, it set up where Van's written it and they're revising it, and Ada and Van are talking about it in 90 years later, or whatever, 70 years later, in the 60s. So it is written, the narrator is really unreliable. And not only is he unreliable, but he's the character and the commentator. So it's got like a lot of puzzles there. But it seems like in this section to me, struck me as being much more like romantic and like trying to write that sort of book, like a big, sweeping Russian novel. But by keep bringing up Lolita, by referencing like Lolita a bunch of times, by having the section with the painter who would like only paint women, girls from behind, and that he would always lift her up and like basically sexually harass her in various ways. Like all of that is set up almost as foils to the fact that like, as if he's playing a game of like, forget for a minute that they're half brother and sister and just watch this. And then you're going to feel uncomfortable because that readers are already like uncomfortable because of Lolita. And so going into this, any of that's like kind of triggering. And so I think it's an interesting game for him to play as a writer where he takes something that's like, everyone's going to condemn automatically. Incest is bad. And then for 122 pages, puts you into that in a way that's like childlike and like sort of wondrous. Like the description of when she gets him off the first time when the barn's burning is like none of the language is specific. It's all metaphor.
Yeah. I think again, that sort of the thing that for me is much more astonishing is he's not trying to be scandalous at all. He's saying they're perfectly happy, man. So that's the whole point.
Yeah.
It's not even, the criminal, kidnapping, perverse all European raping young American girl that it takes place in Lolita. This is like complete consentment. I mean, we are perfect for each other, and we are going to fight for it, you know. But there's one thing. I hope I'm not going to spoil anything for you, because you'll keep on reading, and I'm not going to keep on reading, you know.
This is all we get.
You know, at the end of this episode, I'll be, you know, like at the train station waving you. Bye. Bye. Right back. Tell me how it ends. Tell me how it ends. No, but I mean, in the book of letters by Nabokov, there's one, and this is really, it's a very short letter to a reviewer of the book. It's a very fun letter, but it's very strange, well, very revealing what he says about, he writes to a Professor Matthew Hodgard. He was at the Department of English in Cornell University, and his review of Ada appeared in the New York Review of Books. And he says, listen to this because it's very funny. Sir, I do not really mind your introducing ridiculous errors such as add grace instead of add gaze, or the reference to Gardner. Look up the passage in his book and index, all through your review of Ada. But I do object violently to your seeing in reunited Ben and Ada, both, this is the interesting part, both rather horrible creatures. A picture of my married life. What the hell, sir, do you know about my married life? I expect a prompt apology from you. But the interesting thing is that he considered Ada and Ben two rather horrible creatures. I mean, it's not like some sort of love in the time of cholera sort of thing, that love that, you know, goes through the ages and survives everything. He's saying they're not good,
right?
So it's sort of strange in a way.
That's
because sometimes you're thinking he's celebrating them.
Yeah, I'd always thought, like, I feel like I'd read somewhere, heard that Van Veen is one of his like big horrible people, horrible characters, and that's why, in a way, this section reminded me. And it's what makes this complicated in a way to talk about. Like, in this time and in the climate, there's so many things about like what you should and shouldn't depict in fiction, and what's allowed and what not allowed, and so on and so forth. And like, this falls into that category. At the same time, it feels like a bit of the Anacrenina game, where it's like you're being duped on some level. Like, and that it's like Vronsky is great, you know, Karenin's such a dick, and then like you kind of know like it's probably like painting this to set me up, and then when it starts to reverse, you get like the fuller character thing. So I had that feeling in this, that like, especially because this section becomes totally clear that Van wrote this and that they are looking at it much later, that it is so unreliable, that it is like making this out into being this romantic, beautiful kind thing.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's incest still, right? And and the fact that she's 12 is another part that makes it. It's one thing to be like, oh, well, they're cousins who end up finding out that they're half brother and sister, but you know, they're cousins, and like, I don't know, I can squint and like be okay with it because they're both like 18 and consenting, but he's 14 and she's 12. And then that all of these things within our climate now are like, I can't imagine this book's reaction if it came out in 2020.
I think that the most worrisome, sad thing is probably it won't come out, but for many other reasons than that one. You know, it's like they're going to say, I mean, who's the target of this book? I mean, who's going to read it?
Yeah,
That's true.
I don't know.
At that level, there'd be a lot of criticisms, but I'd be curious.
One thing I did like in this section was the attention to detail with like flowers and trees, and it almost sets up this picturesque garden, like idyllic garden landscape, and then you insert this devil into Eden.
Yeah.
Right.
There's some of that. Yeah, it's true. But but it's amazing that's the amazing thing of Nabokov for me. Like, well, it really, people tend to doubt that sort of thing he repeated all the time, that he saw letters as colors. That he had this some sort of, I don't know, I don't remember how it's called, that song, mental, something like that. But it's all over the place. I think he's writing with colors, all like painting. It's like painting, writing in a way,
Yeah. I just say one other thing that's impressive is like his vocabulary and writing in a time when you couldn't just like Google what are crazy words about like geology. To know like these things are like so impressive.
Yeah. And another thing that is very interesting is that in some very strange way, it's a science fiction book, and he hated science fiction. Nabokov, he was like a big fan of communication with the great beyond. In all his books are like sort of currents and ghosts. But he didn't like science fiction at all. He which is strange, because once he almost collaborated with Hitchcock in a project, and what he proposed was the movie about a Hollywood star, an actress who gets married to an astronaut, and the astronaut goes into space, and when he comes back, it's different.
Oh, I saw that with Johnny Depp, that one movie.
Yeah. Sort of, yeah. But it's very Hitchcockian sort of thing. It's like Cary Grant, Joseph Cotten in those movies, like, they're not what they're, Norman Bates, they're not supposed what they're supposed to be,
I was looking at the dates on Ada and wondering if he ever read any Philip K. Dick in the 60s or not.
Well, that I don't think so.
I doubt he would, but
yeah.
No, they're just, regardless of science fiction, in one of the last short stories, there's one of the last ones, it's science fiction short story that it's titled Lens. And he says, it's very funny, he says, "Finally, I utterly spurn and reject so-called science fiction. I have looked into it and found it as boring as a mystery story magazines. The same sort of dismally pedestrian writing with oodles of dialogue and loads of commutational humor. The cliches are, of course, disguise. Essentially, they are the same throughout all cheap reading matter, whether it spans the universe or the living room. They are like those assorted cookies that differ from one another only in shape and shade, whereby their shrewd makers ensnared the salivating consumer in a mad Pavlovian world where, at no extra cost, variations in simple visual values influence and gradually replace flavor, which thus goes the way of talent and truth."
Yeah, that's pretty strong. There is an essay that one of our listeners sent to me that I printed out and I haven't read yet because I kind of think I might need to wait till we finish the book, but it's Ada's science fiction. It's like a critical essay on reading it as a science fiction.
Yeah, but I think that more than science fiction, it's like some sort of the continuing adventures of Alice in Wonderland also.
Yeah.
In fact, Nabokov translated Alice in Wonderland into Russian. It's one of his translations.
Huh.
Yeah, I remember that. And I think, was it in this section that there's a reference to Alice in Wonderland? Or maybe it was in the last one, but it's like one of the inverted titles where it's like Palace and whatever.
Yeah.
I can't remember what that was now, but yeah.
It's funny, when I was reading this section, I kind of got the feeling of when I watched Barry Lyndon for the first time by Kubrick, really like slow, and it's almost like he'll take a genre that you think and do his own thing with it and make you sit with it in a way. Yeah. And in the way when you think of like 2001, right? What a different science fiction film that was compared to everything else. And how like slow and like, this isn't science fiction. It's like, absolutely this is. I'll show you what science fiction actually is. And,
although when I think when it was like 68, 2 years ago, when it was like the 50th anniversary of 2001, there was a book that came out and they told about the making of the movie, and they told, like the raging discussions and arguments between Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke about showing the aliens or not.
Mm-hmm.
Clarke was all for it. He wanted to show them, and Kubrick says no. And that was like a point of, and that's the revolutionary part of 2001. You don't see anything because, I mean, I think that Kubrick understood the idea that if we saw aliens, we won't be able to understand them.
Yeah, it's like a Stanislaw Lem sort of idea too.
They don't have to be like human, or have humanoid, characteristics. They can be like gas or color or whatever,
Yep.
But I feel like the same way too with when you read Lolita and it's an American travel novel, right?
Yeah,
like
it's a road novel. Yeah,
in that classic tradition, and it's like Nabokov goes, no, I'll do my American road novel. Here you go.
Yeah, but he puts himself into a very strong tradition. But he discovers motels.
Yeah,
there were no motels in fiction up until Lolita.
So
it's
weird.
It's like the great motel novel, road motel novel.
Yeah.
I saw something on the New Yorker page turner. I didn't read that article, but it was about the death of landlines in fiction, which is something I've always been sort of interested with movies. It's like you can't set movies in. It's hard to write a movie set now in the way that it was easier when it's like after 9/11, but before the iPhone is like a sweet spot where like characters have to interact in certain ways that are cinematic rather than just like texting each other. That is more realistic. Yeah. Like there wasn't that element yet. And it wasn't like that way of getting all the information immediately and everything. There's still like a way of the communication flows that is much more like normal human in that sense. It works better for film. And for books, I think that might be something eventually too.
But the fun thing is now you see a movie that is shot a year ago with two people kissing on the street, and it's an historical movie.
Wow.
What are you doing?
I missed that. Wow, lines. Yeah. That's cool.
No. I mean, it happens to me. When you see even an 80s movie, when someone starts running looking for a telephone.
Yeah.
It has to make a phone call, and he runs, and it doesn't work, and he asks, enters in a shop and says, "Can I use your phone?" And the people says no or yes. No, it's strange.
I have another question that's probably dumb. That maybe not as dumb as Borges, but on page 81, where it talks about the magic carpets or jickers that were given to a boy on his 12th birthday in the adventurous days before the Great Reaction, as if, and I think there's mentioned one other time, these magic carpets. Is this a world in which magic carpets exist? Or is this like something that,
oh, yeah.
Very bottom.
Oh, yeah.
Those delightful gliders called magic carpets or jickers that were given a boy on his 12th birthday in the adventurous days before the Great Reaction, which is capitalized as if it's like an event that maybe happened within this world. But yes, that's one of the moments that I marked in here of like, I still don't know where we really are. Or like what the rules of...
Because there are hints all the time that like it was like some sort of big crack in space-time and so the map sort of move, It's like, yeah, it's
yeah, it's really it's like a multiverse or something.
But I think that's a reflex of something that he announces pretty clearly in Speak Memory, which is one of the greatest books he ever wrote. He's all the time like trying to go back to Russia, and I think that in these pages he's sort of reconstructing, some idea. They always ask him, why don't you go back? And he always answers in his interviews, because the Russia I knew it doesn't exist anymore, and I don't want to superimpose the new one into my immortal, invulnerable, and eternal one. He didn't want to make comparisons, and I think all the time he's doing this here.
Yeah, that's true. That makes sense.
In fact, he does not go to Russia, but he brings Russia into America.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a Russian America. It's like an invasion in a way.
Yeah. I like that. That's fun. Because this is going to be interesting. I know you're going to leave us and not continue reading, but I'm very curious to see how all of this unfolds over the next 500 pages or whatever.
I don't know. I read. I made some cheat. I cheat some because I read. There's a section near the end that it's titled "The Texture of Time." That is the book that Ban writes on time. Based on Nabokov's obsession with the ideas of done. This philosopher, strange philosopher who was also like a airplane pilot and expert fisherman. It's a very strange character. And Borges was also a fan of him.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote like a very Proustian book on time, and Nabokov uses it. And I read that because in the remembered part, the character of the book finally reads Ada. He manages to do it in a very peculiar, very strange, and non-orthodox way. I'm not going to say anything more, But he finally makes it, and I needed to read that part, and I read that Brian Boyd book where he sort of explains a bit about the whole thing.
That's interesting.
What a shameless plug! My goodness. I couldn't help yourself to our thousands and thousands of audience members.
Yeah.
Pre-order the remembered part. Do it. Yeah. Do it. Pre-order it now, even though it's not available for pre-order. Just do it. Get ready.
I think that Will almost finished it. I'm completely flabbergasted. Yeah.
Ooh. Wow. That's amazing. I talked to him a couple weeks ago, but he didn't mention that.
Yeah.
Well, if you're watching this or listening and you're holding out on me,
he was going to watch. He told me. I don't know if it's.
We're gonna have words if you're holding back a Rodrigo book from reading.
He's going to burn the manuscript. When he finishes, he's going to destroy it.
Imagine
the burning part.
The burning part.
Yeah.
That's what we can have as a launch party.
Yeah.
Another part that I really like in here that I thought was super funny. Will says he's close. He just chimed in on the chat and said he's close to being done. So he's getting there.
Close is a very ambiguous word. It's like interesting. He's very interesting.
What do you think? Interesting.
I think it's
sympathetic. She's very sympathetic. And she ends up being Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction, Another incorrect movie. There are lots of things that can be shown today or can be commented on today.
One of my favorite descriptors that you could never use is in this one, that she was a jolly, handsome woman. Can you imagine? Yeah. John, what do you think? She was a handsome woman.
Yeah, no.
What? I meant it nice. What the heck?
Then it sounds. Then you have to think about. I mean, she's a handsome woman in the voice of James Stewart, and it sounds perfect.
Yeah.
Sort of related to that, I love their and for you guys as writers, I love the critique that they have of what's her name, the novelist writes that short story about borrowing the necklace and losing it and paying $500,000 francs and earning back, and then
I think what's that book? When I read that part, I managed to track it. Did you know which book is that?
I figured it sounded familiar, but I thought maybe it was just a fairy tale I'd heard before. And then
no, I think it's something. I don't know if it's Balzac or something like that, or.
It just reminds me of like all the O. Henry twists.
Yeah. It's a short story by Maupassant or something like that.
Oh, that would make sense too.
I think so.
Probably or something. That totally makes sense. But I love that their comments when they ask about it. And she's like, neither of you told me how you liked my new story. It's a good fairy tale, said Ban. It's a fairy tale, said careful Ada. That's fucking sharp.
Yeah.
It's a book.
Now that's a book.
That really does have all the qualities of book.
No, he's amazing in that sense. I mean, he's like no. I mean, he gives. I mean, he doesn't save anything for him. You know, it's like, and in this book, I think he was like, this is my, you know, everything goes. You know, in a way, because it's very interesting, the idea that after these books he writes Transparent Things, that is a very slim book with a young girl again, but with a publisher as hero, which is very strange. That there aren't a lot of publishers or editors as protagonists.
Yeah, that's why my superhero character will really be a successful one.
I think in the last novel of James Salter, last one, before he died, the hero is the protagonist is the publisher also. There aren't many publishers as protagonists, you know. No. Sorry, Chad.
Oh no, yeah, that's quite okay. I don't want to be. I don't need to be
your time.
Oh my god.
And have you read? I mean, the other day I remember that I went into my library and looked for it. Have you read books by this science fiction author? But he does science fiction and does other things. Dan Simmons. Have you heard of him?
No.
He has a very famous book about Hyperion and the rise of Hyperion and Endymion and whatever. But he has two. It's a whole novel in 2 books. It's like almost 2,000 pages. The first one it's called Ilium, and the second one is Olympus. And it's a very strange book. It's like some sort of alien race clone and sort of resurrect an historian, an American historian, and they put him on Mars, where there are in the very, very, very far future a race of aliens that are trying to reenact the Iliad by Homer with droids. And this is the most amazing part. And there are whole sections of the book that is these aliens discussing if they're going to make it in the style of Shakespeare, Proust, or Nabokov, Ada, or Ardor. And intersect all through the novel are like fake chapters of Ada or Ardor. There are like some sort of expansions of moments of this. It's a very, very strange book. Really, really, really strange.
What was the name of it again?
The first one is it's titled Ilium, and the author is Dan Simmons, and the second Olympus.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll link to it in the show notes for this too, for anyone listening after I find it. There we go. Yeah, I haven't heard of that, but that sounds interesting. Yeah, it's a long book too, man. 731 pages. Why are you like loving these long ass books?
Thanks a lot.
Which one? The Dan Simmons ones?
Yeah,
they're long. Told you.
Yeah. Oh man.
I'll just wait for David Lynch to do a bad movie about it.
Wait, which one? Ada or those ones?
Those ones.
Like Dune. You say the new Dune. Yeah. Have you seen the previews of the new Dune?
I have. It even has a Pink Floyd song. So
yeah. The last one of the Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, because I think when Jodorowsky was going to make Dune, he was going to have Pink Floyd do one of the soundtracks for one of the houses. So
yeah,
makes me think Denis Villeneuve is going deep. Yeah, it looks pretty cool.
This one looks well, I really like Blade Runner 2049. I think it was very, very good. And
Arrival was a nice sci-fi film. Yeah,
it was good.
Except all the translator part, that was pretty lame. But
yeah. That's another thing. I mean, when we were talking a few minutes ago about, Nabokov hating science fiction, I think that what he hated was the idea of the future without him.
Oh.
Because he's always, there's this famous quote by him that it's like, the future is the obsolete in reverse, which is an amazing idea, And he's always completely obsessed by the past all the time. I mean, all his books are. Humbert is obsessed by his past. Pale Fire is completely obsessed, and he's obsessed by the books he has written in the past also. But he also has you told me you read Pnin again.
Yeah,
there's a moment in there that it's, for me, when I read it, it was like, I can't believe this. One of the saddest parts of the book is when his son comes visiting him. Remember the chapter?
Yeah.
And there's one part when they both have the same dream, and when they wake up, they tell each other the dream. And the dream is the story of a king escaping from a kingdom going into exile. It's Pale Fire.
Pale Fire. And in Pale Fire, Pnin shows up because who's the assassin runs into essentially on campus.
Yeah. Well, but that's easier to do. But
that's
but in Pnin, he's sort of predicting Pale Fire. He hasn't written it yet.
Yeah,
it's very strange.
So interesting. The way that his mind must have worked to put all this together is just incredible. Incredible.
I mean, I think he has one of the greatest good strikes in history of literature. I mean, he's like, well, I have the three volumes here from Library of America, and in the first one is The Real Life of Sebastian Knight, Ben Sinister, which is not perfect, Speak Memory. The second is Lolita, Pnin, and Pale Fire. I think that it's not better book ever.
Yeah.
Plus the screenplay for Lolita. And the last one is Sad as Transparent Things and Look at the Harlequins. I mean, show me a writer that did something like that, one after the other.
It's pretty amazing. It's really amazing. There's so many lines I marked as I'm flipping through here that I just loved.
And at the same time, have you seen this documentary that they filmed at the hotel in Montreux where they lived? It's very funny because, well, they're already dead, but they have lots of material from the time they were living there. And they interview, all the personnel of the hotel that was there when they were living there. And one of the barmen said, Vera wrote all the books. I'm completely sure. He never wrote a word. And the interviewer said, what? I mean, he was all the time playing tennis and chasing butterflies. It's impossible. She's the one who wrote all Nabokov's books. I mean, it's
kind of love it.
Yeah,
that'd be great. It'd be like the opposite of Elena Ferrante in a way.
Yeah.
Not to say, just to clarify that, I believe Elena Ferrante is a female, but all the time that's always a persistent rumor of like people being like, oh, clearly a male must have written this. And in this case, it'd be funny that it's like,
have you read her? Have you read a book? Is she, he, it any good?
Yeah, they're like completely. I've read the first book that was translated that was called Days of Abandonment is fire. And that book is tight and vicious and wonderful. And then I read the quartet, the Neapolitan Quartet, and it's totally fine. It's like a very accomplished sort of kind of mid-century long literary book. Like it's very much what it's supposed to be, and it does it extraordinarily well. It might just not be, it's not necessarily my favorite thing. Like I'd prefer something that's a little bit more experimental or weird or flawed in various ways, but it's definitely like world class. There's no doubt. Yeah.
But it's like some sort of
the new book I haven't.
But it's sort of like Stefan Zweig, that sort of writer. You know what I mean? Not the same style or the same period, but
yeah,
Sandor Marai.
Right. Like it's very serious. Yeah, it's serious but approachable, and it fits. It hit tech. She checks all the boxes that make it clear as to like why people really like her, and there's a lot of different reasons that people could like her. Like the insight into like female lives and into relationships, all that, like the language, the sort of social construct. It's all there. It's all of those things, and it's all done in like the right way. Almost to the point, like to me, it's almost like reading it was almost like, well, this is like. It's just everything else done really well. Like, I don't feel like there's anything new here so much as it's just like those pieces put together right.
And you know what makes me so sort of sad, irritated about this sort of phenomenons is that I wonder how many of Elena Ferrante's fans ever heard of, I don't know, Giorgio Bassani, The Garden of Finzi Continis, or the Ferrara novel, which is basically the same school of writing. Yeah. And they're never going to get there because, you know.
Yeah, you can't expect people to read more than one book.
Yeah. It's the same
here, right?
The same way that people, well, this is not exactly the same, of course. But I mean, people that sort of gets excited about, 50 Shades of Grey. I mean, go read Wuthering Heights, man. It's exactly the same story.
Did you see that the house that inspired Wuthering Heights is for sale?
Oh, yeah?
Really?
Yeah, I think if we all pitch in a few bucks, we might be able to buy the garage.
We have to get it. We have to get it.
Great. And then we could set it on fire.
Also, the manuscript of the remembered part inside.
Use that as the kindling.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, I don't know if there's anything else I was going to say about the specifics of this particular plot, because it's all pretty much straightforward. That they get together, they have a very sexy scene during a barn burning in which they begin their love affair. There's like
define sexy in a Nabokovian context. I'm curious about it.
Sex is described.
Sex is described. I think that the part where okay, so I don't know if sexy is the right, but when there's a section writing about watching her paint and like coming in behind her and like smelling her hair and her neck and all that, like that's a very like flowery, purpley, like sexy type of writing but I also think I like the part where it's like
no, but and it's really admirable in a way that he's like really being a teenager there. I mean, that sort of infatuation. I mean, and I'm never going to get excited again about smelling the hair of no one.
Yeah, or that little bump on the back of the neck.
It's over.
That sticks out, right?
It's over.
But then it's paired with those wonderful concrete details, like he kept five coins in his pocket to hide his
direction,
basically, like little things like that give it this youthful innocence and that burning passion.
Yeah.
While it's still wrong, it's just what a masterful. Yeah, I'm always in awe reading when he kind of gets very passionate with his prose. It's.
I'll give you a sexy reading to lay this down.
What page?
So in the scene when they do have the burning barn and he goes to a room and they're kneeling and all that, and it's like there is like this is the part that you're talking about, Brian, and that's like what I was thinking of too. In order to explain tactually, she belly danced against him, still more or less kneeling, her long hair getting in the way, one eye staring into his ear. The reciprocal positions had become rather muddled by then. Then he pulls out his penis. And she's like, "Oh, it's all skinned and raw. Does it hurt? Does it hurt horribly?" Which I find to be incredibly funny because I just imagine this like 14-year-old kid just like constant, like just like, this is painful at this point. And he's like, "Touch it quick," he implores. Van, poor Van. She went on in a narrow voice the sweet girl used in speaking to cats, caterpillars, pupating puppies. "Yes, I'm sure it smarts. Would it help if I touched? Are you sure?" "You bet," said Van. And then she starts touching it. It says, "Relief maps," said the primrose prig, "the rivers of Africa." Her index traced the Blue Nile down into its jungle and traveled up again. "Now what's this? The cap of the red beliked is not half as plushy. In fact," positively chattering, "I'm reminded of geranium or rather pelargonium bloom." "God, we all are," said Van. "Oh, I like this texture, Van. I like it. I do. Squeeze, you goose. Can't you see I'm dying?" But our young botanist had not the faintest idea how to handle the thing properly. And Ben, now an extremist, driving it roughly against the hem of her nightdress, could not help growing as he dissolved in a puddle of pleasure. That's fucking 50 Shades of Grey level.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's like the first sex scene in which a penis is being discussed as like a river Nile. That's like I'm there for it. I'm like,
it reminds me of when they kill, when he finally kills in at the end of Lolita, and when you hear him read it out loud, it's very funny. And the way the expressions he makes when he's being shot, he's going to fall down the stairs, and he's oohing and awing and pursing his lips and wincing. Like, this is supposed to be the giant climax we've been waiting for, and he tells it in this like funny, humorous. I feel it's like the same way here. Like, we're getting the forbidden love, and he's touch it already, will you? Like, yeah.
Well, he was completely convinced about there's not an important big classic book without humor. I mean, if you don't laugh reading it, it's not working at all. I mean, the idea of the masterpiece, serious, solemn, Broncinius, Marmorian masterpiece was not for him at all. You know, there are parts in Speak Memory that they play like this, not exactly sexual ones, but with that same sort of sensuality. You know, about everything being like embedded in some sort of permanent, almost carnal pleasure. It's all the time is that in Nabokov all the time.
Yeah, it's like he gives more passion to the cutting and eating of a sandwich at under the tree versus like here you get more like bathos or It's,
but it's what we were talking at the beginning. It's pure perfect happiness. His theme, if you sort of distillate to his most synthesized expression, it's perfect pure happiness all the time, even in the most sordid parts of Lolita or whatever.
Yeah, there's always an exuberance, especially with language, with color, with sensory. It's
and the idea of the characters feeling all the time like some sort of being chosen ones, in the world, and being able, to capture and feel and sense everything in a way that the others can do because they don't feel that sort of pretty sophisticated carnal energy, but at the same very brainy at the same time. It's all the time like some sort of thinking about itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you guys want to add?
Do you have the finalists? No.
Yeah, I do. I have the long list.
Let's see.
Well, let's end on a good note.
Is Nabokov in there?
I wish that would be awesome.
I mean,
it's all what you expect. It's fine. We're not on there. We're never going to be on there. It's not complaining about.
But Nabokov should have won the best, the National Book Award in translation and the English one both. He translated himself.
For sure. I mean, it's basically just all New Directions books, like usual, and Europa.
Well,
you want to hear them? Okay.
I don't know. you want us to hear it?
No, I don't care. It doesn't really fit into here. But we do not have any books on here once again.
Okay. I think when you edit it, it's just all New Directions, and then the elevator music plays.
Think
about this. Bob Dylan, who in a 80s song of his, in his most dark times, wrote the verses, "I've seen better times, but who has not?" which is one of my favorite quotes by Bob Dylan. He just managed to get a #1 this year with that song about JFK. It was the first one he got a #1 being 79. And he's Bob Dylan, so, and if you add up to that, Twin Peaks season 3 wasn't even nominated for one prize at the Emmys.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Not even one.
Yep. Oh, I know. I'm good.
Think about this way. There's an anti-terra, another United States where open letter books are,
appreciated.
much more than that.
Oh, that would be a fucking nice place to visit. Instead of I mean, there was like 5 minutes. There were 5 minutes where I said,
come on, use your new superpowers. You can bring it. You can bring that to our dimension.
Absolutely,
Thanos, do it.
It really was. There's just like 5 minutes of like, oh my god, there's going to be something part of 2020 that's not a complete piece of shit cesspool, and then it's like, nope, sorry, buddy.
In a world of cinematic realism comes the publisher. This book needs to be difficult.
I have something very sad to tell you, Chad. We are just in September. We have October, November, and December yet to go this year.
November is going to be the real test.
Well, think here we are now acting, the remake of a film that hasn't finished. It's completely paradoxical what's happening here.
I know.
I mean, it's hell again.
Yep.
It's going to get worse in 2 weeks. This is going to be like, oh God.
Okay, what's your favorite lines?
You can save us, Chad. You can save us. Use your superpowers.
I have 2 favorite lines.
Use your sound cannon. Use your sound cannon.
I really think that I think it took me a week to get like clear again from that.
But how does that work? I don't understand. Which is like some sort of sound wave?
Yeah, it's like the loudest sounds you can imagine, and they're like sound like they're right next to you. Like it's like a pinpointed like thing that it can like disperse a crowd because it can sound like there's like this like whatever going off like right near you. And so the one that screwed me up sounded like a car.
No, that's what I told you. It sounds like the trumpet of Jericho.
It really does. Really does.
And the walls of your head came crumbling down.
And that was the end of it. Good. I'm out.
A scream comes out of the sky. Remember that beginning?
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I do.
Gravity's Rainbow.
Yep.
Who was we have to remember this. Pynchon was an alum studied with Nabokov. Remember that? Cornell.
Yeah.
And Nabokov, of course, he didn't remember him at all. But Vera says, I remember him. He had a very nice handwriting. That's what Vera said.
It's got something.
Yeah.
So I have 2 favorite lines, Brian. Do you want to go first, though? I know your favorite line, Rodrigo.
First, I'll go. Well, my favorite one is the last one I ever read.
Yep.
The last one in page 122. The last one is ought to begin dating every page of the manuscript. Should be kinder to my unknown dreamers.
After you had said that, and I was like, oh, yes. Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, it's the perfect place to stop reading.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it makes sense.
Coming off the dream part, I thought, I need to go back and see. Was that in the epitaph or not? I can't remember.
Oh, I don't either.
No, it's not. No, it's in the remember part.
Okay.
It's in there.
What do you have, Brian?
I just the joy, the pleasure of reading the line, not for anything else than just how beautiful it is on 99. On those relentlessly hot July afternoons, Ada liked to sit on a cool piano stool of ivoried wood at a white oilcloth table in the sunny music room, her favorite botanical atlas open before her, and a copy out in color on creamy paper, some singular flower. She might choose, for instance, an insect mimicking orchid, which she would proceed to enlarge with remarkable skill, or else she combined one species with another, unrecorded but possible, introducing odd little changes and twists that seemed almost morbid in so young a girl, so nakedly dressed.
God. I have another one. I
Yeah.
have another one I really like this. When it says, when we remembered our former selves, there is always that little figure with its long shadow stopping like an uncertain belated visitor on a lighted threshold at the far end of an impeccably narrowing corridor. Amazing.
Yeah. Wow. My two are a little bit lighter than both of those. One is
Beat that.
I got page 113. We were abominably depraved, weren't we? All bright kids are depraved.
That's amazing.
And then I think it was literally just a phrase. If people remembered the same, they would not be different people.
God, where's that one?
That is on page 120. Because they're debating like when things took place. Or
When did it happen? Yeah, the fallibility.
Like this.
120.
Yeah, right in the middle of the first parenthetical. Sorry, no. If people remembered the same, they would not be different people.
God, that's okay.
Intense. So, okay. I was trying to figure out where we're going to next week, and then I got stopped. Okay, so for next week, we are going to talk about chapters 20 through 29, which is pages 123 through 180. So we'll move past where you were, Rodrigo, where you've been. I also noticed that on page 169, as I say this, that there's a reference to Joyce and Proust.
Okay, send me a postcard.
We'll send it. We'll send you a postcard. Brian, anything you want to add? Where can people find you online?
It doesn't matter. I am on Twitter, but I just mentioned this thing and anything cool that we read, but it's at @BrianWood_. But yeah, I'm in Atlanta, so just come by and say hi. Everything's open out here.
Everything's cool.
But it's Will in Atlanta also. Yes.
Yeah, we're in it together.
Okay. Are you writing?
Of course, yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Of course, yeah. It's I'm getting close. It's getting close. It's interesting and close.
Great.
That's a perfect ending. That's a perfect ending. Well, thank you guys. It's been a lot of fun.
Great. Thank you again, and good luck with the book. I hope the ending. It's. Let me know if it's a happy ending. That's all I want to know.
Okay.
I think it is, because they're like nonagenarians already, and they seem to be very happy wherever they are. So
well, it was very good to see you, Rodrigo. You make me happy.
You make me happy too.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All right.
We're all very happy. Very Nabokovian.
That's part of 2020.
The moon on the drum. Sick of Senor Glazy, the blue eyes on the bass guitar.